Amazing to be here. Everything at Rise is always so big and intimidating. I just want to start by talking about going native, the concept of going off the field, taking a different perspective to how we build businesses and how we think about the world. And I'm going to start, if I can, by actually just challenging the fundamental way you think about the internet opportunity globally. I'm going to start with this. I don't know if you know what this is, but it's a jeepney. It's a unique thing. When the US military was based in the Philippines, they left a number of their military jeeps. And through the geopolitical change in the Philippines, the US military largely left, and they left their jeeps behind. But when they left them behind, they became a very uniquely local thing. They'd been pimped out. They're now the taxis of the future. And you choose your taxi based on the colors and the image. And you see here the extraordinarily vibrant essence of everything that is amazing about the Philippines. It's 100 million people. It will overtake Japan in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of total population. GDP growth has tripled. But it's an image you will never see at an internet conference. And the reason is, most of our images at internet conferences start like this. This is from the back of the Vatican, and I'm a failed Catholic. This is the moment of the beatification of Pope Francis in 2005. This is the same image in 2013. And this is one of the great images that capture the power of the internet and how it's changed our lives. And why? Because each of those devices they're holding in their hands now are extraordinarily powerful. So this image, someone recognize this shot. The guy on the left-hand side is Garry Kasparov. He's the world chess master, and it's May 1997. And the dude opposite him is actually not playing chess. He's working a computer, but the computer's not there. It's in the room next door, because it's the size of a room. And what happened? In May 1997, humanity changed forever, because the world chess master had lost to AI for the first time. So here's the scary thing. That enormous computer that is in the room next door, IBM Deep Blue, now has the same computer processing power, the same number of teraflops as the iPhone 4S. So every single one of those devices is now like a supercomputer. So coming back to our jeepneys in Manila, no one cares about the 100 million people because the internet in Manila has traditionally kind of sucked. But watch what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years. This is the same Pope, now in Manila, and from whatever image you see supercomputers in the hands of people now all over the world. Emerging markets, forget China. Everybody else will talk about China. There is an explosion of the middle class in emerging markets globally. Excluding India, excluding China, over the next 5 years, the middle class grows from 600 million people to 1.3 billion people. And let me give you that from another perspective. In my working lifetime, the number of companies in the Fortune 500 globally, 5% of them were in emerging markets when I started my working career. By the time I hopefully start thinking about retiring, it will almost be half of the whole Fortune 500 companies. 70% of the 7,000 companies that will grow to over $1 billion in revenue in the next 10 years come out of emerging markets. So what happens when there's such a significant economic shift going on in the world, when the battleground is shifting so quickly? There's a desire to think about the world through a US paradigm. And often when people try to describe iflix, they talk about it as the Netflix of Asia. And they don't really need to think about it to any greater extent than that, because the story is really simple. Kind of Netflix went to Asia, it met someone, a local market, it started to customize, and it had a beautiful baby. And that baby looks just like Netflix, and I kind of get it, it's iflix for emerging markets. But here's the problem with that narrative. When you leave a baby and you go back to America and your US paradigms, the baby starts hanging out with very local friends. And when you're hanging out not in Silicon Valley or LA, when you're hanging out in the streets of Jakarta, you're hanging out with your mates doing very, very local things. So take Gojek, which is one of the great emerging markets companies. It's very simple. It's the Uber of Indonesia. until you realize it's nothing like Uber. Uber's the original inspiration. But there's now a Gojek, an Ojek, a motorcycle for your every need. They have innovated faster in a much, much more local way and creating scenarios that are completely unique to the Indonesian market. Why? Because their context, what they wake up and think about every day, is uniquely Indonesian. So iflix's context is simple. Our vision, our dream, what we wake up every day and gets us out of bed in the morning is to lead what we believe is an entertainment revolution. But we only do it across emerging markets. It's the next 3 billion people that are coming online to the internet over the next 15 years. But this is our context. Our context is not paid television. Our context is not Comcast or Astro or PCCW in Hong Kong. This is our context. So this is a store in KL. Every single DVD in that store is pirated. If you look over in the top left-hand side, they even have a curated Bruce Willis section. They have a customer loyalty program, and the guy will call you to tell you when a high-quality DVD comes in that he thinks you might like. It's like their algorithmic recommendation. $6.2 billion of spending goes into pirated DVDs. What happens over the next 15 years as people get connected to the internet? Those 1.3 billion people, at the cost of a pirated DVD a month, represents about an $8 billion revenue opportunity, which is completely new. And so that's what iflix is. It's a product to compete with and to replace piracy. Uniquely in the world, every single show can be downloaded and watched offline. No ads, super simple, all for the price of a pirated DVD. And if piracy is your context, it becomes the paradigm for the entire business. We track piracy data by market, by episode. We can see what people are watching, when they start speaking about it on social media, well before traditional media has even become aware of the fact a show has been released. Piracy and the percentage of the top pirated shows we have in every single market becomes the quantitative metric on how you actually manage quality. So we work with 190 studios globally, and all of the major Western studios that we would all recognize because we grow up in mature markets. And the titles we tend to show to investors or at a conference like Rise are titles we'd all recognize. They're blockbusters, they're cross-cultural, they're major franchises. Pepper, Dora, every episode ever of SpongeBob SquarePants, if you're a 7-year-old and you want to binge watch back to back. But that's actually what drives the growth. What's driven the success of iflix are things that are very, very local. London Love Story is an Indonesian movie that came straight out of Indonesian cinemas and straight onto iflix. If I share this story, in every market we go into, we get our local GM, and they head down to the pirated DVD store, and they buy the top 100 pirated DVDs. In Ghana, the #1 pirated DVD is a Korean title called Legend of the Blue Sea. There's no historical connection between Ghana and Korea. There's no trade relationship. There's no historical exports. But we now live in a global culture where the internet has empowered people to connect with the things they love more than ever before. And so anime is now becoming a digital trend in a way it's never been before. In the Middle East, it's Ramadan specials that people can now binge watch on. And in Indonesia, iflix has just become the first service in the world to actually simulcast 2 live football games every single day. But the context is very different. English is not a first language. I don't recognize the title, so how do I discover shows? So iflix looks less like Netflix and much more like Spotify, where 50 to 100 celebrities in every single market curate playlists and actually recommend them to you. I have a news feed which notifies me when those things change. And so here's what's happened in the global content business. The good news for everyone who loves TV is that TV and movies is exploding. There's twice as many high-quality television shows made this year as there were just 3 years ago. And the right-hand side, what you see is global television ratings. What we all hear about is TV is kind of in a slight decline. What that story doesn't tell you, in fact, is that there's 2 very different stories going on. For everyone above the age of 65, almost no one at Rise, I suspect, they're watching more television because there's so much to watch. But for anyone who's under the age of 25, TV has fallen off an absolute cliff. My children will never, ever know what a channel is. They each sit there with their own personal device on the couch doing something different, and they're okay to call that family time. So how does that translate then into emerging markets? Our world looks completely different. Paid television is basically flat over the next 5 to 10 years. Television sets are basically flat. But because the entire of emerging markets is a millennial audience below the age of 25 to 30, depending upon the country, it's the mobile phone revolution that is leading the way. That smartphone is creating a global internet ecosystem that we've never seen before. And in that ecosystem, the rules are completely different. 98% of people have a prepaid mobile. Less than 1% of people have a credit card. There's no way to collect money from people. We've had to run trials of sending someone out on a bike or a scooter to collect $2.50 from you. And it's really tough to build a business that way. And so instead, iflix now works in a very deep, integrated way with telcos. Not just billing to the carrier bill, but actually making content and telecommunication services a deeply integrated single bundle. We're now having to map, literally at a region by region level, how the actual internet works. In Myanmar, getting 80 terabytes of content in and out of the country basically doesn't work. We have to physically ship servers with terabytes of content into the country and then host them literally on a regional basis. And right now, iflix has about 1,500 devices, little Raspberry Pis from Sudan to Iran to Nigeria to Vietnam that are tracking the internet and telemetry in every single country. So iflix is now 2. We celebrated our second birthday about 2 weeks ago. We're now about 700 people, and what we're trying to do is build the first emerging markets media platform. We've got about 4.2 million customers from the 10 markets we're in. They're consuming about 50 years worth of content a day, almost entirely on mobile phones. The average session duration is about 2.5 hours. So on the days that I binge watch, peak time starts about 10 p.m. Just as I should go to bed, I hit play on another episode. And then I should go to bed, I hit play on another episode. And so it runs through to about 2 a.m. So we have a whole bunch of very tired customers watching content on mobile devices, mainly in their bedroom. So coming back to this 2-year-old thing is when you're trying to grow that fast, it does feel like you're a screaming toddler. And so this was an image that a friend of mine posted on Facebook, just to say, hey, happy birthday. And your instinctive reaction when you see that is, it's not a very emerging markets photo, right? And I have beautiful kids, so it looks like my kids, but it doesn't really represent the markets in which we operate. And so when you do search on 2-year-olds on the internet, you do see amazing things. There are beautiful photos that represent the culture of the markets we operate in. There's very famous photos, which is a 2-year-old in Indonesia. And I kid you not, when you search on 2-year-old, and you can check it, you also get this. And I'm not making a political statement, right? But if the current times tell us anything, it tells us that the US does not have a monopoly on great ideas. I think we're entering a new phase of the internet. We used to operate in a world of global giants who ran completely global services and made lots of money, and very local businesses that would operate in a single market and generally didn't make any money. I think we're now entering a new phase of the internet, which is there's the opportunity to build world-class companies on world-class technology executed locally everywhere. And so my hope is, over the next 2 years, someone's sitting on the stage at Rise and calling Uber the Gojek of America. Thank you.